The case of James Cawley, accused of the brutal murders of his estranged wife, Amanda Cawley, and her mother, Lindy Dobbins, is a harrowing tale that intertwines themes of domestic violence, emotional turmoil, and the search for justice. This case serves as a stark reminder of the impact of abusive relationships and the tragic consequences they can have on individuals and families. The following account details the events leading up to the murders, the legal proceedings that followed, and the implications for the families involved and society as a whole. Background of the Cawley family. James and Amanda Cawley were married for several years and had 2 children together. However, their marriage was fraught with challenges, including financial issues and emotional instability. Amanda was a strong-willed woman who had begun to seek independence from James, ultimately leading to her decision to leave him. She moved in with her mother, Lindy Dobbins, in a bid for safety and support as she navigated the complexities of their crumbling marriage. As Amanda attempted to extricate herself from the relationship, she began dating another man, which intensified the already simmering tensions between her and James. This extramarital relationship was a significant source of friction, leaving James feeling betrayed and desperate to retain his family. The emotional strain of this turmoil would prove pivotal in the events that followed. The day of the tragedy? On April 15, 2014, a series of tragic events unfolded that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Amanda and Lindy were at Lindy's home in Lynn, Massachusetts, when James arrived unannounced. Tensions had been running high, and Amanda had previously expressed fear of James's unpredictable behavior. On that fateful day, he confronted Amanda in a rage. Witnesses reported hearing loud arguments and screams coming from the residence. In a fit of jealousy and despair, James fatally stabbed Amanda and Lindy. The gruesome nature of the murders shocked the community and sent ripples of grief through both families. Emergency responders arrived on the scene only to discover the horrific aftermath. Amanda and Lindy were pronounced dead, leaving behind devastated loved ones and a community grappling with the reality of the violence that had occurred. The arrest and charges. Following the murders, James Cawley was arrested at the scene and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The authorities quickly pieced together the details of the crime and began building a case against him. The prosecution focused on the idea that James had premeditated the murders, fueled by jealousy and anger over Amanda's new relationship. Investigators uncovered text messages and social media posts indicating James's growing frustration and obsession with Amanda's decision to leave him. The prosecution argued that these communications demonstrated his intent to harm her and highlighted a pattern of emotional abuse that characterized their relationship. This narrative positioned James not merely as a grieving husband but as a man driven by rage and a desire for control over Amanda's life. The defense's strategy? James Cawley's defense team sought to counter the prosecution's narrative by presenting a different picture of the events leading up to the murders. They argued that James was not a cold-blooded killer, but rather a man overwhelmed by emotional distress. They claimed that he suffered from severe depression and mental health issues, which contributed to his actions on that tragic day. The defense painted a portrait of a man struggling with the dissolution of his marriage and the subsequent loss of his family unit. They attempted to humanize James, arguing that he was not inherently violent but rather a victim of his circumstances. The defense sought to establish that the murders were not premeditated but rather a spontaneous act of desperation driven by a mental health crisis. The trial. The trial began on March 24, 2015, and quickly attracted significant media attention due to the emotional nature of the case. The courtroom was filled with Amanda and Lindy's family members, all grappling with the painful reality of their losses. The prosecution opened their case by detailing the events of the day of the murders, presenting evidence, including forensic reports and witness testimonies, to establish a timeline of events leading up to the killings. The prosecution also called upon Amanda's friends and family to testify about the nature of her relationship with James. They described Amanda as a strong woman who had tried to escape a toxic and abusive relationship. Her friends recounted conversations where Amanda expressed fear of James's reaction to her leaving him. These testimonies aim to illustrate the power dynamics at play in their relationship and the level of control James exerted over Amanda. The defense presented their case next, emphasizing James's mental health struggles. They brought in mental health experts to testify about his condition, arguing that he had been in a state of emotional turmoil leading up to the murders. The defense aimed to convince the jury that James's actions were a tragic result of his deteriorating mental state rather than a calculated decision to kill. Closing arguments and verdict. As the trial progressed, the tension in the courtroom mounted. Both sides delivered powerful closing arguments. The prosecution reiterated their view that James acted out of jealousy and rage, while the defense maintained that he was a man suffering from mental illness who was not in control of his actions. After several days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict on April 10, 2015. James Colley was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The verdict was met with mixed emotions in the courtroom. While Amanda and Lindy's family felt a sense of relief that justice had been served, they were also left to grapple with the pain of their loss and the reality that James would be held accountable for his actions. Sentencing. The sentencing phase of the trial began shortly after the verdict. The prosecution sought the maximum penalty, arguing that James's actions were heinous and premeditated. Family members of Amanda and Lindy provided emotional testimonies about the impact of the murders on their lives. They described the void left by Amanda and Lindy's absence and the profound grief they experienced daily. In contrast, the defense continued to emphasize James's mental health issues, urging the court to consider a more lenient sentence. They argued that he was not a monster but rather a deeply troubled individual who needed help. However, the prosecution countered that mental illness should not excuse the brutal nature of the crimes committed. Ultimately, the judge sentenced James Colley to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was met with relief by Amanda and Lindy's family, who felt that justice had been served, albeit in a way that could never bring back their loved ones. The aftermath and implications. The case of James Colley serves as a poignant reminder of the realities of domestic violence and the devastating consequences it can have. It highlights the need for increased awareness and support for individuals in abusive relationships. Amanda's struggle to escape her marriage and the ultimate tragedy that unfolded underscore the importance of recognizing the signs of domestic abuse and providing resources for those affected. In the aftermath of the trial, advocates for domestic violence victims emphasized the need for more comprehensive support systems and legal protections. Amanda's family called for greater awareness of the dangers faced by individuals attempting to leave abusive relationships. They stressed that emotional abuse can be just as damaging as physical abuse and that society must take these issues seriously. Conclusion. The tragic case of James Colley is a heartbreaking account of the devastating consequences of domestic violence. The events that transpired on that fateful day left 2 families shattered and a community grappling with the loss. As society continues to confront the realities of domestic abuse, it is crucial to advocate for change and ensure that victims have access to the resources they need to escape dangerous situations. The legacy of Amanda Colley and Lindy Dobbins should serve as a call to action, urging individuals and communities to take a stand against domestic violence and support those in need. While justice was served in the courtroom, the emotional scars of this tragedy will linger for years to come, reminding us all of the urgent need for change in the fight against domestic violence.